out of freshly squeezed lemon. Lemons are also useful around the house. Lemon juice is good as a cleaner with antiseptic and antibacterial qualities. Mixed with vinegar, lemon juice is a great surface and glass cleaner too. Some quick lemon tips: store them at room temperature, keep them out of direct sunlight, and use them as quickly as you can. Lemons are best right after they're picked.
I'm Isa Suarez in London, and this is CNN.
This is Don Lemon Tonight, live here in western Ukraine in the city of Lviv. And tonight I have new video to show you, but it is graphic. It is from the town of Bucha near Kyiv, a town Ukrainian forces have retaken from retreating Russians. Bodies can be seen lying in the street, but we don't know if they're civilians or soldiers. Also tonight, Ukraine's President Zelensky refusing to say if his forces carried out a strike on a fuel depot in Russia. The Kremlin's accusing Ukrainian forces of launching the attack. And a sugar panic inside Russia. Consumers scrambling for even basic household essentials as they began to feel the bite from Western sanctions. CNN's John Voss joins me here live in Lviv. John, hello to you. We're getting some disturbing new videos from Bucha that I talked about that was just taken by the Ukrainians, and we're only just getting a glimpse of the devastation. I mean, Russia has left in the wake here. What is going on? What's happening with this video?
Well, Kyiv, for perspective, Bucha is about 20 miles as the crow flies northwest of Kyiv, right? The Russians took control of this town, about 37,000 people in the first week of the invasion, up until Thursday, when the mayor tweeted out just a few hours ago that the city had been liberated on Thursday. It's part of that counteroffensive we've seen in recent days. And as you mentioned, the images from inside Bucha that we're now receiving are graphic, the bodies left lying in the streets. We don't know if these are Ukrainian soldiers or Russian soldiers, if they're civilians. Human Rights Watch has reported that many of these Russian soldiers were going from house to house, breaking down doors and windows, searching these houses, questioning people, taking their clothes and their shoes and changing into their clothes on the streets as well. There's reports also of extrajudicial shootings and killings, and people were actually, civilians were being shot at while they went out to get water. This is all according to Human Rights Watch. And as the Russian soldiers withdrew, they mined bridges as well as other civilian infrastructure. As a reminder, targeting civilian infrastructure, deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure is a war crime.
Yeah. President Zelensky speaking out for the first time about the attack inside of Russia. What are we learning?
Well, yeah, he's saying a lot by not saying a lot. He was asked specifically if he ordered that strike on a fuel depot on Russian territory just across the border from Ukraine. And this was his answer, what he said.
I do not discuss any of my orders as commander-in-chief, the leader of this state. You need to understand that on that territory that you mentioned, you have to know they were placing their shooting systems and firing those missiles themselves.
So this has been consistent from Ukrainian officials, from the president all the way down to the foreign minister, neither confirming nor denying that Ukraine was responsible for that attack. And that in itself says a lot. Also notable that at the end there, he talked about how there were missile systems being placed on that territory around that fuel depot, which would make it a legitimate military target.
All right, it's from a fuel depot now to a nuclear plant, Chernobyl. Ukrainian officials warning that Russian soldiers may have been exposed to a high level of radiation at Chernobyl.
Yeah, we talked about this last night. There were some reports that the Russian soldiers who occupied the Chernobyl nuclear plant, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster, they may have been digging trenches in an area known as the Red Forest, which is on the perimeter around the nuclear power plant. That's one of the highest radioactive contaminated areas in the region. And if they're digging trenches, they would have been exposed to radioactive particles. Also, we're now hearing from the state-owned company which is responsible for Chernobyl that they believe that the Russian soldiers were driving heavily armored vehicles on the grounds outside the nuclear power plant. That kicked up a lot of dust and in turn kicked up a lot of radioactive particles as well. Presumably the Russian soldiers would have inhaled those particles. And if there's a high level of exposure to radioactivity, it affects the organs, it affects bone marrow, can ultimately be fatal. So that's a question now which the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, would like to look into. And we hear that the chief of the IAEA is heading to Chernobyl to try and find out more what's happened.
John, we thank you for your report. We'll see you at the top of the hour. You'll be leading our coverage.
Yeah, good couple of weeks, mate.
Yeah, thank you very
Safe
much.
travels.
Hopefully, I'll be okay out here. Everyone keeps wondering what's going on. I think I have the flu or a cold, but anyway.
Okay.
We'll be fine. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
I appreciate it. I want to turn now to CNN's Frederick Pleitgen for more on this attack on a fuel depot in Russia.
It could be a brazen and bold counterattack by the Ukrainians. This social media video seeming to show 2 attack helicopters penetrating Russian territory and firing at an oil depot, setting the facility ablaze. The Russian military publicly acknowledging the incident. On April 1st, at around 5 a.m. Moscow time, 2 Ukrainian Mi-24 helicopters entered the airspace of the Russian Federation at extremely low altitude, the spokesman says. Ukrainian helicopters launched a missile attack on a civilian oil storage facility located on the outskirts of Belgorod. As a result of the missile hit, individual tanks were damaged and caught fire. Video from the aftermath shows the facility engulfed in massive flames, with firefighters struggling to put out the blaze. Belgorod is a highly militarized city right across the border from Kharkiv in Ukraine. It was from here that Russian forces crossed the border and attacked Kharkiv, moving large amounts of tanks, armored vehicles, and trucks towards Ukrainian territory. But the Russians also have massive military support facilities in this area. The Ukrainians so far have not acknowledged they've hit the depot.
I can neither confirm nor reject the claim that Ukraine was involved in this, simply because I do not possess all the military information.
The strike comes as Russian forces have been suffering setbacks in their invasion of Ukraine, withdrawing some forces from the area around the capital Kiev after failing to storm the city. The Russians now saying they want to focus their offensive on the east of the country, which includes Kharkiv, where authorities report a major uptick in shelling in recent days. All this as talks between Russia and Ukraine to try and end the fighting continue. But Moscow now saying Vladimir Putin has been briefed on the chopper attack and it could have a negative impact on the talks. Of course, this is not something that can be perceived as creating comfortable conditions for continuing negotiations, the Kremlin spokesman said. The strike on the oil facility will probably do little to hold up Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but if the Ukrainians are behind it, it would show they are not afraid to strike back at the country that is attacking them. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Kiev, Ukraine.
All right, Fred, thank you very much. I want to turn now to CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton for what is next in the fight. Colonel, thanks for joining us once again. The New York Times is reporting that the U.S. will work with allies to transfer Soviet-made tanks to Ukraine. How will this change Ukraine's ground game?
Well, it's going to be really interesting, Don, because those tanks are going to be T-72 tanks, which are tanks that are very familiar to the Ukrainians. They're also, of course, very familiar to the Russians. It's basically the Russian warhorse when it comes to tanks and to that kind of armor. What they would be doing is the Ukrainians would be using these tanks in this very flat area right here. And what they can do with them is use them to go after Russian forces that would be going into the Donbass. The Russians have telegraphed that they're going to go into this eastern region, which they've occupied part of through their proxies. The tanks could be used to counter Russian tanks, and they could also be used as a kind of artillery to go into these areas and dislodge the Russians from these areas. So that's potentially a bit of a game changer for Ukraine.
Colonel, I've been wanting to talk to you about this airstrike on a fuel depot in the Russian city of Belgorod. Explain why this is such a high-value target.
Sure, Don, absolutely. So this is a really important place because, as we saw in the report that Fred Pleitgen had, Belgorod is right up here. Kharkiv is right here. So this is an area where the Russians have been working quite a bit ever since the start of this invasion. They've been going through this area. This is their fuel depot. This is what they need in order to replenish all their troops. All the troops that are in this area right here, those are the ones that get their fuel in part from the facility that the Ukrainians hit or may have hit during this. So when we look at the strike right here, You can see there's a helicopter coming in. There's one rocket that goes into the fuel storage area right there. And then there's another, there it is, and there a couple of strikes right there from a second helicopter. So what this means, Don, is they had precise intelligence on this target. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. It was critically important for their effort in terms of tactical success. It meant a lot not only for the Ukrainians, but it also showed the weakness of the Russian air defense system if it, in fact, it came from the Ukrainians.
There are new satellite images that show Russian forces have disappeared from Antonov Airport in Hostomel, just 18 miles from Kyiv. How big of a deal is that, and could it get more supplies help get more supplies into Ukraine?
Potentially it could. It depends on how good the runways and in what kind of a condition the runways have been left. So this is a really interesting image. This image was taken on the 21st of March. This is our before image. And if you look really closely, you can see that trucks and artillery pieces are in place behind some of these berms right here that the Russians have built. They did this throughout the entire structure. Here's a tank, for example, that's inside one of these areas. So they did this throughout the airport. Now let's take a look at Antonov afterwards. Right here, you can see that all of the berms that we highlighted before are now empty. It's not a single Russian artillery piece or tank or anything else, not even a truck in any of these areas. So what this means is this is open, may have to be repaired, may have to be fixed, but this is open for the Ukrainians to use as long as it's not being targeted by Russian artillery or Russian aircraft.
Very interesting, Colonel. The Pentagon announcing tonight the U.S. is providing $300 million more in security aid to Ukraine, including suicide drones, night vision equipment, anti-drone systems. What does this mean for Ukraine?
So this right here is potentially something that may not necessarily be a game changer, but it can help get to a game changer. This is a video of the Switchblade drone. You can see U.S. soldiers using it. It's a very light, very portable drone. We've talked about it before, and it can target things directly. And then when it hits it, it's called a suicide drone or a kamikaze drone, and it can go right in and basically destroy any target, and then it destroys itself. It basically takes care of itself. And as you see, it's very easy to launch and can be used in so many different ways throughout the entire theater, and it can be highly effective. In essence, it's a force multiplier for the Ukrainian forces.
Learned so much with you, Colonel. I mean, that drone is, can we see that drone once more? Can you put that up?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, here it goes. I'll step back here, and you can see it's powered like this. It just launches like this. Wings deploy, as you can see, and then it goes right along the surface of the Earth, and then it comes in this way. You can see the way it looks, you know, from a head-on view. And now look at it go after this target, and just basically destroys it like that. So it becomes a really important tactical weapon that can be employed, you know, in any way that that the ground forces want to employ it. Highly effective, very, very useful.
And then it just destroys himself, so you get no information off of it. Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate it.
You bet, Don. Absolutely.
They call it the sugar panic. Russians lining up to buy sugar off the back of a truck. That's what sanctions are doing to Russia. But will they stop Putin's war?
When you follow a story, you may be asked to take risks. And sometimes go down a path that's not marked.
Where Iraqi troops would pre-position and these Americans would advise them.
These protests are a test for Hamas.
Any understanding between Israel and Gaza could quickly fall apart again.
The protesters are just outside a military base. They're throwing rocks and security forces firing tear gas.
When you dare to take risks, you witness passion and persistence.
And they just want to get their past be processed so they can get out of this facility.
And that's where change happens.
The one thing they have in common is a determination to keep going.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
My name is Stephen Jameson, Global Head of Circular Economy Solutions at SAP. The aim of a circular economy is to eliminate waste, circulate materials, keep products in use as long as possible, and regenerate natural systems. We're talking about a fundamental reworking of how we deliver the economy. At the moment, we're based upon an extractive system which depends upon nature, but is ultimately extractive. That will only go one way in the long term. A regenerative economy ultimately creates abundance of opportunity, abundance of materials, abundance of resources that enable us to thrive as a species and thrive as a piece of nature and as a part of nature.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
Welcome to The Lead. We begin with breaking news. The United States has plunged into a recession. We're seeing infections at an all-time high. What's your reaction to that? Here are the facts.
The Lead with Jake Tapper.
New video tonight showing the atrocities of Putin's war in Ukraine. And I have to warn you, it is difficult to watch, but this is the town of Bucha. It's just outside of Kyiv. Ukraine says it has recaptured the town, but these images show the cost of intense fighting. Unclear from the video whether the bodies are civilians or military. I want to bring in now PJ Crowley. He is the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs. PJ, appreciate you joining us. Man, oh man, this video from Bucha is chilling. The horror in these cities and towns across Ukraine becomes more apparent every single day. But the question is, the question is, how is it going to end? But will anybody be held accountable for this?
Don, that's a long-term question, and obviously accountability is dictated through the UN system, and Russia has a veto. Could they throw some mid-level people at an accountability panel down the road? Perhaps. Will that get all the way to Vladimir Putin? At this point, I would doubt it.
You say Putin started this war and he'll choose when to end it. So what needs to happen to get him to the negotiating table? When I said to you when I first came to you, the real question is how will it end? But what needs to happen to get him to the table?
Well, at this point, my assessment would be that that while he's had a bad month, at a tactical level, this has been a disaster for the Russian military. His strategic options are still very much in play. You know, he started this invasion a month ago with the intention of eliminating the Zelensky government. That may or may not happen, but he's turned to a kind of a plan B. He's just trying to destroy as much of Ukraine as he can, those portions of Ukraine that it's doubtful that he'll control, and he may well be consolidating his forces, you know, in areas that he expects to control. You know, at the end of the day, usually the battlefield and the conditions on the battlefield will dictate what options are available once we enter negotiations.
How long do you think it could take to reach a ceasefire? Is that, I mean, is there an answer really to that question?
Well, on the one hand, when there is a ceasefire, sooner or later, you know, Russia will still be holding Ukrainian territory. And the unfortunate aspect is, while Ukraine possesses the ability to resist, I don't think they possess the ability to expel Russia from Ukrainian territory. So that will be leverage that Putin, you know, has. I agree with Fareed Zakaria in the last hour that that Putin is not in any hurry, which means, you know, while there is an increasing cost in terms of sanctions on his country, he's not yet feeling pressure, you know, to compromise, you know, based on what he's still trying to do.
So let's talk about that, because there's this video of Russians fighting over sugar. It shows the impact of the sanctions. Russia's economy is tanking. Inflation is crippling. But is that going to change anything in Putin's calculus?
No, sanctions are an imperfect tool. They can impose costs. So they're good at punishing someone. They're not necessarily as good at changing behavior. You know, think about it. You know, the most sanctioned country in the world, probably North Korea. You know, it still possesses its nuclear weapons. You know, in second place is probably Iran. It is closer to nuclear weapons than ever before. So, you know, to some extent, Putin has 8 years of sanctions experience. He thinks he has found a way, probably with China's help, you know, to make his economy as sanction-proof as possible. So this is, sanctions by themselves are going to be a long-term proposition.
I want to get your take on this airstrike on the fuel depot in Russia. Whether Russia orchestrated this as a false flag or Ukraine attacked a military target in Russia, do you think this is going to lead to an escalation, PJ?
You know, Don, in a sense, we're already experiencing an escalation. You know, could he use it for propaganda purposes, you know, to help him with his own public opinion? You know, undoubtedly. You know, Russia has been attacked, and I would expect, you know, the Russian people to respond to that. But we're already seeing escalation in terms of moving from, you know, convoys heading to major cities now to more indiscriminate use of air power, artillery. You know, if he has to, at some point, reach a ceasefire, he's going to try to take out as many Ukrainian cities as he can, you know, with the intention, if he can't destroy the Zelensky government, he's going to try to cripple it.
Yeah. This is, speaking of Zelensky, on Fox tonight. Watch.
Do you know how many assassination attempts you've survived?
I don't know.
But there have been some.
There are things which is difficult for me to count. My intelligence says there were such attempts, and we saw information about some arrivals, planes. There were other details, but listen, I'm alive, I'm not wounded, I'm intact. So it's hard for me to talk about this. So many people have died in our country.
In your previous answers, you said that Putin wants to cripple or get rid of or cripple the Zelensky government. But how much does Putin want to get rid of Zelensky?
I think that's part of what Putin fears most. An independent, democratic leader, charismatic leader, you know, right on his doorstep, occupying what he thinks is already, you know, Russian territory. At the end of the day, this is about Putin's hold on power and what he perceives as a threat, to him personally. And so, the contrast between Zelensky and Putin is very dramatic, and that is what Vladimir Putin fears above everything else.
PJ, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Don.
Thousands of people escaping from Mariupol tonight. CNN was on the scene as they arrived in a much safer city. You're going to want to see this. That's next.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety and school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF. On the ground in Ukraine, we won't stop until every child is safe. See how at unicef.org.
I'm Richard Quest in New York, and this is CNN.
On the next Vital Signs, we're exploring the future of medicine.
The work we are doing is joyful.
With the team that brought us the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine.
The first subject was dosed in less than 3 months.
Could their groundbreaking mRNA technology also help treat cancer? And get a sneak peek at what other innovations the future might hold, including lab-grown organs and AI-powered medical devices.
Vital Signs, this weekend on CNN.
Redwood Materials is a sustainable battery materials company. So, we focus on building a closed-loop ecosystem for lithium-ion batteries. We recycle old lithium-ion batteries of all different types, both automotive, but also consumer electronics. We take the materials out of those batteries, refine them, extract them, and then remanufacture them into new components that can go directly back into battery manufacture. So I see this eventually, going to be the vast majority of the materials that are going into batteries that will be recycled in the future. Batteries are amazing because they are so recyclable. More than 90% of the materials, those critical materials in the battery, can be reused many, many times without degradation. I think people are really realizing the benefits of having a high recycled material content, both in terms of the environmental footprint of the batteries, but also the cost of those materials.
There were 3 strikes that hit this facility. This is as close as you're going to get.
Just look at the utter destruction caused by this massive explosion.
Imagine the good fortune of the truck driver. He managed to survive.
More than a month into the war here in Ukraine, and the refugee crisis continues.
It is not even remotely close to being a ceasefire.
In Kiev, Kherson,
Zaporizhzhia,
Lviv, this is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
For World Sport, I'm Patrick Snell, and this is CNN.
Tonight, officials in the heavily bombarded city of Mariupol say more than 100,000 people are still trapped there, and Russian forces are blocking aid supplies from getting into the city. But in a major development today, a convoy of buses carrying more than 700 people got out of Mariupol through a humanitarian corridor and arrived safely in the Ukrainian-held city of Zaporizhia. That's where we find CNN's Ivan Watson tonight.
The Ukrainian authorities are here waiting, police checking the documents of the new arrivals. There is a war very much underway, a deadly war and serious national security threats. After people are processed here, there is a major volunteer and city government effort to welcome the newly arrived evacuees and to give them temporary shelter, warm meals. People are tired. There are little kids who've been on this bus, I would estimate, for at least 11 hours. Little kids who have witnessed a modern-day siege and perhaps the destruction of their homes and explosions in just a terrible environment. Now, the International Committee of the Red Cross is trying to reach the city of Mariupol itself and failed, said it was not permitted to go through. There are still believed to be about 100,000 or more citizens, civilians of Mariupol still trapped there in the combat zone, as well as a force of Ukrainian troops that are still holding out against a vastly larger number of Russian military forces that have encircled the city and besieged it for weeks now. So while this is a glimmer of hope after many failed attempts to evacuate civilians, there is still a lot of work to be done to protect the people still trapped in the combat zone. Ivan Watson, CNN, Zaporizhia, Ukraine.
Ivan, thank you so much for that. I want to turn now to my colleague John Berman. He is here, and we've been on very different schedules here in Ukraine, and just wanted to share a conversation about our experiences since we have been here. I've been watching your reporting because, you know, obviously we're not on the air at the same time. But one thing that we've been talking about is the resilience of the people here, and I found one of your reports extremely fascinating. Is when you talk to the fighter pilots. Talk to me about that.
This was really interesting to me. Juice and Moonfish. Juice and Moonfish were their call names. They didn't want to give their real names to protect their identities, and they were wearing their helmets when they were speaking to me. And I wanted to speak to these people who were miraculously defending the skies from the Russians who've claimed from the beginning they had air superiority. Yeah. And Juice and Moonfish told me a combination of their own skill and also the air defense from the ground has been able to keep them in this fight. And they told me, look, we've actually been in this war for 8 years. Okay. Ukrainians, and I'm sure you found this also, they you know, new phase started 6 weeks ago, right, but they feel like they've been at war from Russia this whole time.
This was in 2014. And then you did this interview with this teenager, this kid, right? And where were you? Were you in the back of an ambulance? What were you? It looks like you were.
No, we were in his children's hospital here. We went to the children's hospital. Andre, he's 15 years old, which is how old my twin boys are.
Oh, boy.
And I was sitting there with him the whole time thinking, what a different world it is for a 15-year-old boy now in Ukraine than it is for our children, for the people we love back home when their country's been invaded. They've been terrorized. Mm-hmm. I think we have a clip of this.
Yeah, you do.
Andre was blown up by a landmine. His leg's injured, his collarbone injured. Even worse than that, he watched his mother die.
Yeah.
Right next to him. We can look at that.
Я почав повзти з дороги.
I started crawling away from the road, and then I felt a pain in my left clavicle.
Yeah, I have broken. I feel blood in my left ear. Then I hear shooting, not from weapons, rockets or something. And I climb to stairs and hide here. I screaming one time, 2 minutes or 3. It was very cold. I just be in socks.
You can't walk.
Can't walk. and some peoples in village hear the explosion, and these people take us to his house, накрили нас ковдрами.
As he wrapped us in blankets.
And your mother during this? Where?
Загинула, вона на місці загинула, вона згоріла, ще вона.
She died at that location, and she was still alive when she got the fire, when my clothes caught the fire, and she just burned.
No, and then he broke down, and I thought it was interesting because he's just like every other teenager. He said, didn't he say his mom used to get on him and his dad about keeping the place tidy and
keeping the place clean. Said she was beautiful and she liked everything neat and tidy. His father is with him. He has his father, and you talked about the resilience. He told me he wants to go back to Chernihiv.
Oh, wow.
And he wants to rebuild that city.
Yeah. Also, there's I want to play this. This is from when I spoke to the mayor, because there were people who said to me they'd never hated anyone before, right? But now they hate the Russians. Their contempt for the Russians is just unbelievable. And I think, well, not unbelievable, rightful contempt for what Russia is doing to them. Watch this.
What do you think of the Russians and Putin?
Biden was asked about Putin and called him a butcher. I agree with him.
Putin doesn't understand what he is doing. He's just a tool in the hands of the devil.
Every day, Russian aggressor killed children, women, old people. It is Nazi. It is Nazi. It is crazy. It is today Hitler equal Putin. Putin equal Hitler.
I was at a Christian relief shelter 2 days ago talking to people who are praying constantly. I mean, religion is what they do. And I was asking them, you know, can you forgive Putin and the Russians? And they looked at me and they said, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard.
And the first part of the interview before the mayor, that family, one of the guys there is a pastor, and he said to me, I don't want the Ukrainian people to become cruel. Even in, you know, despite what the Russians are doing to us, I don't want us to become cruel towards Russians, which I thought was a pretty big thing for him to say.
It takes a lot of strength, but it's not easy.
I also noticed that we've been sort of on similar paths, even at different times, because I covered the arts here. I covered them. They took the statues and the artifacts out of the museum, scrambled to get them out to safety. And you were covering the art as well. Did you go to a museum?
So if you walk around the city, which I know you have, I mean, there's just these posters everywhere. Art is crucial to this city, Lviv. And the propaganda art, the anti-war art struck me. And we had a chance to speak to a graphic artist who's producing these anti-war posters. Just blew me away. And what he told me, he said, you know, this is my way to fight.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, apparently we don't have that, John. But that's
roughly.
That's what he said.
To paraphrase what he said, this is our way to fight. And, you know, and he wanted to evoke emotions. He says sometimes what art can do, what people speaking can't, which is get you emotional.
The most dramatic moment, and we thought, I think, as the air raid siren
I think this
off.
is the all clear. This might be the all clear. We had an air raid siren a few hours ago when I was on air.
Yeah.
Hopefully this is the all clear.
Okay. Then that was a long time before the all clear came. But one of the most dramatic moments I think that we had was when the fuel depot was hit. You were on the air, and then I scrambled to get there. And I believe we have some video of that. It happened just a few days ago. And I think that there may have been sort of a false sense of security here because we're so far west, so close to the border of Poland, that we thought it could not happen. But this was strategic, and that just shows Putin's reach.
Yeah, he can hit anywhere he wants in this country with one type of weapon or another. I mean, this was, you know, he can't hit Lviv with artillery, with the dumb weapons that would just flatten the place. But if he wants to hit a fuel depot here, he's got the precision weapons to do it. And you're right, there's no single place where you can escape.
Yeah. I have a few seconds left. What stood out to you most since you've been here?
The resilience of the people and how they all, not just the resilience, but they're all convinced, the conviction that they're going to win. Yeah. Utter conviction that they're going to win.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's a very similar thing. And also what stood out to me is We have to be careful about this not happening in the U.S. because there are people in Russia who are not speaking to their friends and family here because Russia's believing propaganda. They live in two different realities, and we saw that play out so much over the past 5 or 6 years in America that it was a lesson to me about being informed, about make sure you're staying informed and getting the right information to people.
There's only one country that invaded another country. There's
Right.
one invader, one invaded in this case, period, full stop.
Thank you.
Great
It's
to
good
see you.
spending our time here together. Yeah,
It was nice seeing you in passing at least.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll be right back.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
At Garnier, we are investing a lot in green sciences. We think this is the future, green tech and biotech that really allows us to bring performance and innovation for the consumer whilst being more sustainable. And I really believe this move is going to happen across the industry in beauty, but also outside of beauty, because at the end of the day, it's one of the solutions, you know, to the climate crisis.
Because for a long time, people, we talked about greenwashing, we talked about communication. But in the end, what you're saying is that companies are moving more towards actual technologies that are going to allow them to be green in a way that is both profitable and good for the consumer.
Yeah, green is a very serious topic, you know, and it's all about science and delivering performance. And you're right that sometimes, you know, people were referring to greenwashing, but we can prove people with the science and how we actually do things and improve the footprint of our products with very clear numbers. And this is really, I think, the big challenge for us and the whole industry.
They may look similar, they may taste similar, but sweet potatoes and yams have some differences. These root vegetables are not even related. True yams are native to Africa and Asia. Most yams today, 95%, are harvested in West Africa, while many of the yams sold in the U.S. are typically grown in Caribbean countries. And yams are closely related to lilies and grasses, while sweet potatoes are native to the Americas and are part of the morning glory family. Now, when it comes to your health, both of these root vegetables are low in calories and high in nutrients. 1/2 of a large sweet potato has just 81 calories, and the flesh of a medium-baked sweet potato has enough vitamin A, that's in the form of beta-carotene, to meet your entire recommended daily amount. Yams tend to be starchier. They also are good sources of nutrients like vitamin C.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN. Your primetime lineup.
Tell me why and how.
Get all the perspectives
We start with climate change, a code red for humanity.
on the news that matters.
Hope it's profitable.
The epidemic of the big lie. Amanpour, Hala Gurani tonight, Quest Means Business, and The Lead with Jake Tapper. There's no better way to bring breaking news, politics, and business into context. Across Africa, businesses are working together like never before. All new on CNN, Connecting Africa.
Join me and Lenny Jokos as we crisscross the continent to show you how new connections are revolutionizing commerce in Africa. This month, Connecting Africa through opportunity.
Africans are opening the doors more to other Africans on the business-to-business level.
Connecting Africa on CNN in association with Afreximbank.
So Will Smith announcing tonight that he's going to resign from the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences after he slapped Chris Rock on stage during the Oscars show on Sunday night. The Academy out with a statement tonight saying that they accept Smith's resignation and will continue with their disciplinary proceedings against him. So joining me now, CNN entertainment reporter Chloe Melas. Chloe, hello to you. This is actually the first conversation I've had, although I've been deeply ingrained in, or at least paying attention to this story. The pressure is mounting on Will Smith. Now he has resigned. What is he saying tonight?
Hey, Don, great to see you. So Will Smith released this incredibly lengthy statement. I'm going to read to you guys a small portion of that. He says, "The list of those I have hurt is long and includes Chris, his family, many of my dear friends and loved ones, all those in attendance and global audiences at home. I betrayed the trust of the Academy. I deprived other nominees and winners of their opportunity to celebrate and be celebrated for their extraordinary work, and I'm heartbroken." Well, yeah, I mean, this has overshadowed the entire Academy Awards, where you had Troy Kotsur, the first actor outside of Marlee Matlin who has won an Academy Award, deaf actor. You had Ariana DeBose, who had, this really big moment for her as the first queer woman of color to win for Best Supporting Actress, not to mention Questlove in his category right after the slap. So it has detracted from all the good that came, but we still haven't heard much more from Chris Rock, on this. Just a little bit when I went to his show earlier this week. He said just a little bit, but we're just waiting for him to say more.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about Chris Rock in a moment, but let's get back to Will, because, he had just won for, by the way, the whole idea about Chris Rock not wanting him to be arrested is not new. I mean, the night of the Academy Awards, people were talking about that on social media, people who were there from Hollywood saying he was going to be arrested, and Chris Rock said no. So that part is not new. I found it interesting that it just came out, I think, today. But he won for Best Actor for King Richard. This is so outside of anything that Will Smith has ever done. It goes against his whole the way he has conducted himself, his whole image. Yeah, his whole image. How is this going to impact his career, you think?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, Don. So first of all, the fact that he has resigned before he could be expelled is interesting to note. This means that he can no longer vote as an Academy member. There's like 9,000 plus Academy members. So that means that he won't be part of award seasons in the future in terms of voting and deciding perhaps who gets nominated, because every vote counts. Now, could he still be nominated? You and I were talking earlier, he does have a movie in the works called Emancipation that's going to be released later this year, a true story.
That's supposed to be better than
enslaved
King
slaves.
Richard. His performance in that is supposed to be, they said it's better than King Richard, but go on, yeah.
So here's what I'm trying to figure out. From what I'm hearing, Will could technically still, even though he's resigned, be nominated. So he could be nominated, but here's where it gets interesting. So on April 18th, the Academy is going to reveal what are their repercussions, what are the consequences? Because I heard from a source earlier this week that Will had a Zoom meeting with Academy leadership where he apologized again, and they heard him out and they said, well, you are still going to face consequences. So if he's banned potentially from ever attending the Oscars again, and then if he gets nominated, he wouldn't be able to go. But that's just, theorizing here.
Yeah. Hey, Chloe, listen, it was my fault. I talked too much. We ran out of time, but I know Chris Rock is, there was a heckler saying, he said something about, F Will Smith or something. He says, no, I'm not going to go there. I want to process this. And I think Chris is going to deal with it in the way that he has dealt with this entire thing, the adult in the room. And he's been very introspective, and he's handled himself very well. So, and we hope that Chris is okay, because that slap is going to be out there forever. Thank you, Chloe. I'll see you soon. Appreciate it. We'll be right back.
hosting a global event like the FIFA World Cup 2022 in Qatar is a complex logistical challenge. GWC are proud to be its official logistics provider. No matter the industry sector, logistical challenge, or security need, GWC deliver the complete end-to-end logistics service, backed up by more than 3 million square meters of supply chain infrastructure. GWC, delivering logistics innovation.
All new African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities. Transform lives. Two artists draw inspiration from their communities and their surroundings.
My production or my process has created a value chain within the community. It has created jobs.
African Voices Changemakers, only on CNN, in association with Glow.
In 1917, Cartier came upon his breakthrough, revolutionary, by far most famous design, the Cartier tank. Now, the inspiration for this design was, as the name suggests, a British Mark IV tank.
For much of its history, it was an extremely exclusive watch. The tank was made in very small numbers until the mid-1960s. Cartier tanks from before the 1960s especially are tremendously collectible. It's an absolutely iconic design.
This became an elegant symbol, a very desirable watch. Through the ages, we have Jackie Onassis wearing this watch. We have Truman Capote, Andy Warhol, Duke Ellington, Jeff Goldblum. Team Tank is a stylish team indeed. It's a rectangular case and it has these very identifiable vertical sidebars called brancars. You can recognize a tank across the room.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 70,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
With COVID infection rates and restrictions waning in some places and a variant surge in others, it is difficult to understand where we are in the coronavirus pandemic right now. But 2 years ago, the situation was very clear. We were in a global lockdown. And that's when 2021 top 10 CNN hero Dr. Alla Stanford sprang into action, testing and vaccinating more than 75,000 people in Philadelphia's hardest hit Black and brown communities. Well, today she is still on the front lines working to protect her community